What happens when a rhino swallows a mouthful of grass? Does the grass simply pass through its enormous body? Not even close. Inside the rhino, an entire microscopic ecosystem begins working to unlock energy from the plant. A rhinoceros looks almost like a living tank, massive, powerful, and seemingly built for strength rather than delicacy. But every day, this enormous animal faces a remarkable biological challenge. Its food is mostly grass, a material that is surprisingly difficult for any mammal to digest. So what happens after a mouthful of grass disappears between those enormous jaws? Where does that grass go? How is it transformed into energy? And how can a rhino extract useful fuel from plants that its own digestive enzymes cannot completely break apart? The answer begins at the very front of the animal, with the rhino's extraordinary mouth. The first step is mechanical. A rhino does not simply swallow grass whole and hope for the best. Its broad muzzle is specialized for grazing, gathering vegetation close to the ground. Inside the mouth, the tongue helps manipulate the plant material, while the teeth grind it into smaller pieces. Saliva moistens the food, making it easier to form into a swallowable mass. But there is an important limitation here. The rhino's own digestive enzymes cannot simply unlock all of the energy trapped inside plant cellulose. That means the most important stage of digestion has not happened yet. The grass is being prepared, but the real transformation will happen much farther inside the body. Once the grass has been sufficiently chewed, swallowing begins. The food passes through the throat and enters the esophagus, a muscular tube connecting the mouth to the stomach. It is not simply falling downward because of gravity. Coordinated muscular contractions help move the food along the digestive tract. Slowly, the camera follows that journey deeper into the rhino. Ahead is the stomach. But unlike a cow, the rhino does not have 4 stomach chambers. Its stomach is comparatively simple, and that difference tells us something important about how this giant herbivore survives. The grass has now reached the stomach. Here, the food is mixed with gastric secretions, while muscular contractions help break it apart physically. The stomach is also an important checkpoint. It prepares the material for the next stage of digestion. But the stomach is not where most of the rhino's plant fermentation takes place. That is one of the most fascinating features of this animal's digestive strategy. Instead of relying on a specialized multi-chambered stomach like a cow, the rhino sends much of the plant material farther downstream. The real fermentation factory is waiting ahead. From the stomach, the partially processed food enters the small intestine. Here, the chemistry of digestion becomes increasingly important. Enzymes and secretions help break down components of the food that can be processed by the rhino's own digestive system. Proteins, fats, and other digestible nutrients can be reduced into smaller molecules that the intestinal lining can absorb. But grass contains something especially challenging: large amounts of structural plant fiber. And this is where the rhino's digestive strategy takes a dramatic turn. The material that cannot be completely digested here continues onward, toward a massive microbial ecosystem. The intestinal wall is not a simple pipe. Its internal surface is highly specialized for absorption. As useful nutrients become available, they cross the intestinal lining and enter circulation. Some nutrients can now begin their journey toward the organs and tissues that need them. But the bulk of the grass is still not finished. Large amounts of plant fiber remain, and that fiber contains enormous amounts of potential energy. The rhino just needs help unlocking it. That help comes from organisms living inside the rhino itself. Now we reach the part of the digestive system that makes the rhino such an efficient plant processor. The remaining fibrous material enters the hindgut, including the cecum and large colon. This is where the rhino's strategy differs dramatically from that of a cow. The cow is famous for fermenting plant material before it reaches the small intestine. The rhino instead relies heavily on fermentation farther downstream. And inside this enormous digestive environment, the rhino is not working alone. Here, billions upon billions of microorganisms become the hidden workers of digestion. These microbes can break down plant components that the rhino's own digestive enzymes cannot efficiently digest on their own. As microbes ferment the fiber, they produce metabolic products that the rhino can absorb and use. Among the most important are volatile fatty acids. In other words, the rhino has effectively outsourced part of the job of digesting grass to a microscopic ecosystem living inside its digestive tract. This is one of nature's most elegant solutions to the problem of eating a food that is chemically difficult to unlock. The microbial process has transformed part of the plant fiber into compounds the rhino can actually use. These fermentation products pass through the intestinal wall and enter circulation. This is the critical conversion. Plant material that seemed almost unusable has been transformed into a form of chemical fuel. The grass has not simply disappeared, its chemistry has changed, and now those molecules can begin traveling through the rhino's body. Once absorbed, these useful molecules become part of the rhino's internal economy. The bloodstream is the transportation network. It carries nutrients and metabolic fuels toward tissues throughout the body. At the center of this circulation is the heart, continuously pumping blood through a body that can weigh well over 1,000 kilograms. The rhino's enormous size makes this transportation system especially impressive. Every muscle, organ, and living cell depends on this constant delivery system. Before many absorbed nutrients reach the rest of the body, they pass through an important metabolic checkpoint, the liver. The liver is one of the body's great chemical processing centers. It helps regulate nutrients, produces bile for digestion, stores certain substances, and performs many other metabolic tasks. What happens to each molecule depends on what the body needs at that moment. Some can be used immediately, others can be transformed, stored, or incorporated into larger biological molecules. The grass has now traveled from the mouth, through the stomach and intestines, into the bloodstream, and through one of the rhino's most important organs. Now the chemical energy extracted from the grass can support the animal itself. Cells use metabolic fuels to perform the work that keeps a rhinoceros alive. Muscles need energy to move. The heart needs energy to beat. The digestive system needs energy to continue processing food. Cells constantly require fuel simply to maintain themselves. For a massive animal, this continuous demand is enormous. Every step through the grassland represents countless microscopic chemical reactions happening inside the body. Digestion is not a single event. It is a long sequence unfolding over time. As the remaining plant material travels through the hindgut, microbial fermentation continues. The rhino's digestive tract gives these microbes an environment where they can keep working on the fibrous material. Slowly, useful compounds are extracted, while the material itself becomes increasingly processed. But eventually, even the most efficient digestive system reaches the point where some material simply cannot be used. Efficient digestive. As the remaining material travels farther through the large intestine, the body continues recovering useful water and electrolytes. This is important because digestion is not only about extracting calories. The body must also carefully control its internal water and chemical balance. By this point, much of the usable material has already been extracted or transformed. What remains is becoming increasingly concentrated and ready for elimination. System reaches the point where some material simply cannot be used. Not every part of the grass can become fuel. Some plant structures resist digestion. Other material consists of substances the body does not need, along with microbial remains and other waste products. The digestive system has extracted what it can. The rest continues toward the final stage of the journey. This is not failure. It is a normal part of biological digestion. A digestive system is not designed to make every molecule useful. It is designed to recover what the body can use while safely moving the rest out. What began as a mouthful of grass has now become part of a much larger system. Some nutrients have been absorbed directly. Other energy-rich compounds were created by microbial fermentation. Together, these resources help support movement, organ function, tissue maintenance, and the countless processes required to keep this enormous animal alive. The rhino's digestive system is therefore more than a tube carrying food. It is a biological processing network connecting the outside world directly to the animal's cells. Let's follow the journey one final time. Grass enters the mouth, where the rhino crops and chews it. The swallowed material travels down the esophagus and enters a simple stomach, where it is mixed and chemically processed. From there, digestible nutrients can be processed and absorbed in the small intestine. But the fibrous plant material continues farther downstream. In the cecum and colon, microorganisms ferment plant fiber and produce compounds the rhino can absorb and use. Those products enter circulation and contribute to the animal's energy metabolism. Finally, the material the body cannot use continues through the large intestine and toward elimination. And this is what makes the rhinoceros digestive system so fascinating. The rhino does not need a cow's four-chambered stomach to survive on grass. Instead, it relies heavily on fermentation in the hindgut, where microbial communities help unlock energy from fibrous plant material. This strategy allows a massive herbivore to process large amounts of vegetation while maintaining a relatively simple stomach. The system is not simple because the animal is simple. It is simple in one location and extraordinarily sophisticated everywhere else. At the smallest level, the story becomes even more remarkable. The grass has been reduced, processed, fermented, absorbed, and transported. Its usable chemical energy is now participating in the metabolism of living cells. Those cells power movement, maintain tissues, support organs, and keep the entire animal functioning. The distance between a blade of grass and a moving rhinoceros may seem enormous. Biologically, however, they are connected by a continuous chain of chemistry. So what happened to that mouthful of grass? It was cropped, chewed, and swallowed. It passed through the esophagus and entered the stomach, where digestion began. Digestible nutrients were processed and absorbed, while much of the tough plant fiber continued deeper into the digestive tract. In the hindgut, a vast microbial community helped ferment that fiber, producing compounds the rhino could absorb and use as metabolic fuel. Water and useful substances were recovered as the remaining material moved through the large intestine. And finally, what the body could not use was prepared for elimination. But perhaps the most remarkable part is not what happens to the grass. It is what happens because of it. A simple blade of grass becomes chemistry. Chemistry becomes cellular fuel. And cellular fuel becomes movement, strength, maintenance, and life. For the rhinoceros, the journey from grass to energy is not a simple meal. It is an extraordinary collaboration between an animal, its organs, and an invisible world of microbes living inside it. A giant survives on grass because, inside its body, an entire biological system is working together to turn plants into life.